Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine an apple. Can you see what color the apple is? Can you tell where the lighting is on it? Where is the apple? Perhaps it's hanging from a tree or sitting on the kitchen counter. Can you see it in a different color, like purple? Try spinning the apple around 180 degrees. Try to make this mental image that you have as clear and vivid as possible and hold it there. Okay, you can open your eyes now. On a scale from 0 to 10, what would you rate your mental image of the apple? 0, of course, being no image whatsoever in your head, while 10 being incredibly vivid. Where do you fall on the scale? In general, the average person falls around the 4 to 6 ratio. Highly creative people often seem to rank higher on the scale, reflecting their abilities. However, on the opposite side of the spectrum, those who don't actually have any mental imagery capabilities are a rare occurrence. It's called aphantasia. Take, for instance, a man referred to as Dr. P in Oliver Sacks' book, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. He recalls becoming unable to recognize his students' faces in music class. Gradually, he became unable to recognize everyday objects through sight alone, reaching out to grab his hat only to have a handful of face and hair that he could not recognize as his own wife. According to the book, however, he could identify key features of many things, such as shapes, certain drawings with key features like cards, or even Einstein's wacky hair and bushy mustache. See, he wouldn't identify things in the obvious manner that most people do, but more so in a mechanical way, based on their literal makeup. If he was giving something as simple as a shirt, he wouldn't identify it as a shirt, but more so as a surface with two outstretching appendages and a singular hole near the top. He constructed the world based on key features and relationships. His diagnosis was visual agnosia, an impairment of recognition of objects, usually caused by damage to the connections along the pathways that connect the occipital lobe with the parietal lobe or the temporal lobe. The occipital lobe assembles incoming visual information. The parietal lobe and the temporal lobes allow you to understand the meaning of the information coming in. This really solidifies the great complexity that is our brain. There's so many different aspects that go into our brains, so many neurons firing at different times, so many different things going on at once in order to construct the reality that we see. All this got me really curious about today's technology and its capabilities to provide insight into the human mind. I mean, we have EEGs, MEGs, fMRIs, or even Elon Musk's recently developed brain chip that can literally measure the neural activity in real time of the human brain.
You can see each of the spikes from the 1024 electrodes, and then if she snuffles around, touches this snout in the ground, or you kind of feed her some food. Pigs love food.
It sounds like some kind of futuristic alien EDM song, but those beeps are real-time signals coming from the pig's brain. And this one specifically connects to the neurons responsible for her snout. I can't make this up. To say the least, technology is evolving at a very rapid pace. For instance, a study done by Jake Schnocker from the University of Berkeley, California, was able to somewhat reconstruct mental imagery through means of fMRI. In order to confront the task of reconstructing somebody's mental imagery, they showed movie trailers to the participants while in the fMRI, focusing primarily on the visual cortex discussed earlier. They built a dictionary capable of translating the real world with different parts of the brain and their response. They used this to sift through an immense amount of YouTube videos to blend the frames together and create a pseudo-image equivalent to what the brain was producing at the time.
YouTube, blending together the frames that matched best with their results. This allowed them to make a rough reconstruction of the movies the subject saw.
The results are not perfect, as you can see, but it's an interesting look at what is capable with our technology. Now, some may see this as eerily alluding to George Orwell's 1984 and the Thought Police, but this technology is far from being able to read minds. It is simply a simple reconstruction of what one is visualizing at a given moment. But if we want to throw on our tinfoil hats and have a hoot and a holler of a time, here's an interesting limitation to the study. It used an fMRI. An fMRI measures the blood flow to the brain consequent to neural activity, not the neurons themselves. Interestingly enough, Elon's Neuralink is able to measure neurons firing. Using his technology, we could hypothetically reconstruct extremely vivid images from one's brain. Now you can be scared.
That's
Jeez, is that true?
that's delightful.
What is that actually happened?
There are a few other studies that have attempted to reconstruct one's imagination, but they all come with the same blurry and somewhat eerie look. In some ways, it makes sense that these images are blurry. When you think of a memory, it's often blurry and the subtle details are missing. Edges are misinterpreted and backgrounds are entirely ignored. Perhaps our brains simply don't need extremely vivid imagery in order to navigate the world and perceive memory. But none at all? Those with aphantasia literally have no mental imagery whatsoever, but are still able to recall memories and dreams. How can that be when we just broke down how the brain constructs imagination? Those seem like concepts that would require mental imagery. The answer is unclear and difficult for those of us who are capable of mental imagery to understand. However, the answer to the question from those with aphantasia is that they largely use their associations. It really is astonishing to try to attempt to understand the complexity of the brain, especially in cases like this where a key feature of it is malfunctioning, and yet the people are completely capable. But with complexity comes error. Our brains are constantly remembering details incorrectly. This can be seen in eyewitness testimony, where crucial details are completely forgotten or changed. The study done by Loftus and Palmer even demonstrates that if you change the slightest of information between the time when an event occurred and recalling it, the memory can be altered. This was seen when a car wreck was shown, and they simply asked participants how fast the car was going when they hit versus when they smashed, and other words that provided different connotations, and the results were staggering. Take even the Mandela effect. It's when a large amount of people believe an event occurred when it didn't. Don't think you're part of it? Look at all these images. All the images presented on the right are correct. Crazy to think how much that we believe is false and don't even realize it. Visualization as well as memory is no different. Think about a memory. Many of those details are missing. The edges are faded and the background is blurry. Vivid memories are often the result of a traumatic event or some kind of emotional connection. These are key details. We perceive the world based on the key details around us, and those key details oftentimes get misconstrued. Take another look at this photo. Can you really recognize a single object in this image? It seems so familiar, and yet you simply can't identify any of the objects to what they truly are. There are details here and there that you can recognize, but the final conclusion is missing. This photo embodies how much we perceive of the world completely based on key details and associations. I think this is the closest we can get to understanding the mind of Dr. P. There are aspects here and there that are recognizable, but the overall picture is just convoluted and confusing. Every association we have is critical to how we perceive the world, or at least understand it. In a sense, our associations affect what we see more than the literal information we gather through our eyes. So perhaps, maybe we are all a little bit more similar to Dr. P than we realize.
You're a weird person, right?